right, welcome to Restorative. We're going to start with a spine and hip extension series. So what you'll need is your bolster, center lengthening spine-wise, and you're going to sit on the edge of the bolster towards the base of your mat and have a rolled up blanket. Okay. I want you to set your hips, so your lower body, well, obviously the lower body might be considered your feet, but the lower basin of the pelvis, you want to have that right on the edge. So let's say you're really tall and you're right next to the wall. You're going to go, oh, my feet are going to push to the wall. So you might have to reset yourself a little bit. This is well worth the prep for this pose. This is well worth your circulation to your stomach and your chest. Okay, so I'm going to set my feet on the other side of the blanket, and then I'm going to lower back, and I hope you do too. And I'll just see what happens here. So first things first, you have your head back on the blanket, and you might have to measure this a couple times to get it right. So the bolster should feel like a hunk of a lift for not just your ribs, but also this lower frame. So it'll likely and hopefully feels kind of weird, like everything's getting kind of pulled in the front and lengthened out. So if you've got to reset your clothing or anything, this might take you a few moments. You don't want to feel like you're not fully clothed. You get to choose, you're in Zoom. But here we go. So we have the length. Now my bolster's not high enough under my back, so I'm going to actually length back forward. I do want it so the wings, right, of my blades, I want those to feel like they're kind of getting pushed out to help my chest open. So the farther forward you go, especially if you're tall, you're probably on the end of your bolster. Okay, this should feel like pushing up. All right, measure the position of the legs. If they're really far over the blanket, that's okay. If the calves are pushing into the blanket, it's nice when your heels are right on the ledge of the blanket. That's why if you have it pretty well rolled up, you can scooch it downwards and have it where it's kind of helping your feet have a mild hover over the ground. So you kind of have to keep pushing the blanket so they're hovering. If the blanket doesn't look like it's still rolled up, who cares, right? It's there to support you. Doesn't matter how it looks, it's how it feels. Well, the roll is helpful to start with, but it generally, it dissipates. Okay, let's add some sand. You want to have a bag of sand, or I found a really nice bag of rice the other day with a wonderful cover at the store in bulk area. So you can always find these in other ways than just a yoga sand bag. Okay, so you're going to cross the sand at the base of the waist to the hip front, right, the thigh lids. And then as your chest moves open, if you have more sand than one, you can always put one across the ribs as well. But I would prefer you have, if you've got only one, to have it on the front of the legs, the hip front. Send the arms to release down. In fact, anything that you can explore releasing is essential for a good restorative practice. And that's even, the fidgeting, energetic, and then the settling. So maybe you're pretty busy, a busy bee, and this is just the greatest thing, right? To center back and kind of reset yourself. And now resting the eyes. If you have an eye pillow, it might be nice to use in this first pose. Feeling where the shoulders move back. The bolster is only into your upper back. It's not at your neck, right? The neck is lengthening back on the blanket. So with that movement of breath that you're left with to focus on, feel the move of the inhale filtering in through the nose and the gentle lift of the mid-body. Kind of feel as it lower abdomen, or maybe for you today it starts with the chest. And just take a few moments here where you continue to refine this supported bridge pose. I let my feet be completely comfortable. I don't try to arrange them to be straight up with the toes. I want to work on the hip and the spine extension here. So this front realm of the thighs can always use a little bit of elongation, and that helps into the stomach, the digestive tract, the kind of operating systems in that front body. It just helps with circulation. You know, keep the sand where it's at. Okay, both of them. If you have two and one, I would keep it right there. And then feel what it's like when you bend through the legs and feel the knees motion towards each other. So knees towards each other, maybe they happen to touch, the feet turning in a bit, and then feeling this difference in your back. If I go from the legs straight and then into this, I've now, I'm able to go straight legs without any back discomfort, but some of us might find this is a real relief. You can always get out of a pose if you're not feeling comfortable. Okay, now we're going to shift. So the sand that's maybe on the front of the hip bones, we're going to shift it up to the ribs. If you have two sands, get rid of one. So you just have one across the ribs. And now with the movement of, I kind of have to set it so that when I breathe, that I can feel the movement of the core body, which is actually the diaphragm is what's getting strengthened by that operating kind of system of your breath. I know you think it's your belly moving it, but it's the diaphragm. Okay, now let's take cobbler's pose for a moment. Scoot the feet in towards each other. And if your feet are easily off of the bolster, you have no choice but to have feet together, knees out. And some of us, a little shorter, can put our feet on top of the bolster. This is one of the perks of being short. In some poses, there are perks to it, is you get a little deeper stretch on the inner thigh. Okay, if my feet are on the ground, won't be quite as much, still I feel plenty. But if my feet are up, the gravitational pull is much wider of a base. So just take a moment, let your hands interlace at the roots of the fingers, palms pushing to the ceiling. Likely feels like a little balance challenge, even though you're on your back. And let the arms reach back over. If you feel like you're sliding off the bolster, you're probably not because you're pinned into it. But work with the reach of the arms in unity. And so the shoulders, the upper arm parts start to feel a little bit of tone. Okay. Now bring the arms back towards the ceiling. Okay, and bring the hands down to the sand. Slide it away. Bring the knees to point up, and then once the feet come back down to ground, notice how the neck, if I push into my feet, I receive a little more circulation back to my upper back and neck. But what's interesting is the neck kind of vine, you can perceive the stretch there versus the shoulders. You may find something different though. So I want you to push into your feet and be also cautious here. So we lift the hips up and the weight goes back to my shoulders. Now I'm going to push into my feet, lift my hips and grasp a hold of my bolster and turn it across the mat horizontal. Don't take too much time holding yourself up. Just get back on the bolster so the back doesn't have as much tightening. And then I want you to scoot around so that you maybe shift your knees and your feet on the floor side to side. And then once you're there with the pelvis on the bolster horizontal under you, then, okay, take a moment where you simply bring the right knee into the chest, left leg stretches down. There's that blanket again. And switch sides. So take several times of creating some faster paced movement into your lower back. And the legs, they kind of check out where your leg, how they're receiving this alternating knee to chest. Give it several more times, and we're not counting down how many we're doing. So you could go slower, you could go faster. But when you bring the knee in, feel the opposite leg release and then rebound. So the hip flexor that you were just stretching, these some of the hip flexors, one of them, has to contract again. Okay. The next time you bring the knees back in center, get a ball and be sure you're comfy on the bolster, right? You're making your bolster a little dent in the middle. Okay, ball between the knees and place it so that when you push into the ball, you can actually feel the bones versus like just thigh flesh. So there is part of the knee, a knee part that's pushing inwards. Okay, now give yourself some space besides where the arms can open, and the knees will go side and give it the full side, full reach to the right. And then bring the knees back in center. Take a mini moment to squeeze the ball. Inhale, relax the squeeze. Exhale, knees to the left. Take the time to really keep breathing, right? Don't hold it till the next movement of the knees, but keep them kind of sliding over to that left side so that your waist and your hip zone receive that kind of gravitational pull. Knees back in center, please, and squeeze the ball. Relax the grip, knees to the right. Okay, and now come back in center, squeeze, relax the squeeze, and then knees to the left. And I get a feeling as you come back into the middle, the legs lifting straight up into the feet towards the ceiling, and kind of make a mini adjustment here so the ball really is set between. So it's an easy task for you, as if this is a task. This is task yoga, huh? Okay, the back of the legs might receive some stretch here. So I want you just to notice when you have the item between the knees, if there is a stretch in the legs, or if it's the feeling of inversion, which might be different than a sensation of deep stretch. Okay, now as you bend through the legs, remove the ball and take a sandbag on the hamstrings. This is called sandy hamstring. Okay, so when I place the sand on the back, you're going to reach the sandbag across, and I hope you have handles on your sandbag because this makes it all the better. It probably would work anyhow. I'm trying to remember if that bag of basmati had handles. I think it did. I'm gonna have to try that sometime. I probably should do that so I can at least have experience with that. Okay, so my hamstrings might not feel a lot of stretch in the beginning with the knees in this bending position. That's okay. It's what's important here is that the awareness inside the body is to gently kind of nudge along the experience of loosening up holding patterns. So when my knee's bending, I could let the legs kind of swing up a little bit to get full stretch of the back of the legs. But what I'm going to do is scoop my hands inside the handles and then just let my arms relax out. And I'm going to bend my knees so that the feet can relax. I prefer this angle to it. Some of you might stretch your legs back, like have a little fuller stretch, but this works good. I want something where I can put some circulation into my abdomen, my abdominal muscles, and the digestive tract. So I like the bent leg position. But you have choice. And now if you're kind of falling off your bolster, this gives you a little message about how to set on it when we get out of the pose. Because it happens. Falls happen even on bolsters. Okay, now feel if you're squeezing the knees in, it can take the wind out of you a little bit because of the pressure on the breathing muscles. So use this as a little weight training. It's basically yourself moving in towards your lungs, right? Your knee bending. I mean, all the things you can do to support your inner health and circulation from shapes with some props, right? They're helpful. Okay, now we're going to reinforce this. So when you shift your hands out of the loops, if you were using that, you don't have to. You could be on the ground with the arms down on the ground. Change it. So we're going to move the sand. And I want you to take the sand on the front of the left thigh. That leg stretches down. And then now you'll get your belt. And it's looped up. Our belts are going to be buckled into a big loop. And taking the tail of the belt to the side where it's your dominant hand would be helpful. Could be either hand probably. But feel where that sand is on the front of the left thigh. And then scoop up your right foot with your belt under the center of the foot. And then once you have that loop, I made mine a little too big. Okay. I overestimated the length of my leg. Imagine that. Okay, so make sure that you have a loop that is significant in length so that you can reach it to the crown of your head. That's your good distance measurement there. Right to the crown with my foot straight up as far as I can tell. Okay, now when you scoop up the back of your head, remember head, not neck. We're not putting the belt around our neck at all. Okay, then as I lengthen that left leg down, I like the blanket under my ankle still. It's not perfect, but it's actually helpful. Because if I have something somewhat under my lower left leg, I can kind of push into the blanket, make a little bit of a dent in it so that my foot doesn't turn out quite as much. So it kind of holds my lower leg, not necessarily right on my heel, just above. Okay. Now, right foot is lifted, of course. Weight is back. Brain is back into the belt at the occiput. So as the spine gets to center, you can bring your arms straight back. That might be a bit much. You can take the arms out into cactus. That feels better. And still approach the circulation that is moving to your upper breathing muscles. So we're taking a full blend in the beginning of inversions, right? The energetics of inversions. If the leg is shaking, you can bend the knee, of course, as much as you need to. And if it's still just too much, this might be a time where you reach the hands inside the belt to the side of your head, slide it off, head back on the blanket, and then hold the belt in between the hands so the belt is at the webbing of the thumb and the index. So some of us that might feel a little better. Even to do both of these on the right leg is fine. I like both because my shoulders can generally use a balanced sequence, and this is clearly balancing my shoulders, and it's not a hardship for them. So you might take this for a few moments, at least 30 seconds when we change sides. Okay. The pelvis is really relaxed here. We're trying to find ease in the pelvis and recruit the muscles right in the leg. Okay, now when you shift sides, take the belt off the back of your head, reach the hands up. Okay, now as you shift, the sand is an issue, isn't it? So I would just remove the sand, use one hand to get the sand maybe to the torso, and then take the left foot up, switch sides, get that sand onto the right thigh. As awkward as all it can be, take some time, it'll make itself centered. It's not how it looks. Remember, you don't have to stare down your sandbag to have it look better, but just have it there on the leg. So you go, okay, I feel the weight, and that weight is going to be received in your left leg. So if I put weight on the opposite leg as you put your belt behind your head, let's say just, if you take it off, it kind of cements the whole deal. It sands it. It does sand it. So this will push the right leg down, and the circulation in the connective tissue. And then that left leg, I think it's a fairly mild difference with sand and without, but it certainly helps the muscle have information to go in certain directions. And if you adjust your belt behind your head on the shelf at the back of your head, and again, this one would be about make it feel supportive, not how it looks. Like, you don't have to look at a diagram and go, that's my occipital. I need to go right there. No, maybe you're a little higher. You're not that low though, not on the neck. Now, when you lean your head back into that belt, feel where the arms could go. And you could really play with this one. You could hold your elbows behind your head. It's kind of an interesting version. That feels good. The interesting part about that is for some of you, you let your head move back towards your blanket. And some have their head almost touching the blanket, but still get this nice traction. So for those, you might have your elbows out wide, hands back, or straight back with the arms. Yeah, if it's not, feeling like the circulation is changing, you don't want that tingling, any numbness in the shoulder. If that happens when your arms go back, it's just too much. So your arms might need to be a little bit lower than the heart. Yeah, this one can change week by week in the shoulders. And we'll get the feel. On this side, we're going to do a little different takeaway with it. So where you have that reach, let your eyes close. This is an important one to let your eyes relax and feel. And just center on the experience internally. You're not missing anything right now on the screen. So just let that internal focus be established in the practice. All the way up into the calf. Take the hands to the back of your head, or actually I like to scoop my hands on the inside of the sides of the belt, sides of the skull, and then kind of slide the belt back, put my head on the blanket, and then stretch the arms back. Okay, so they're not very far behind. But how about feeling the left knee bending, almost like you're pointing your toes? Kind of notice how that strikes the sensation in the back of the leg. We want to go for subtleties here. Okay, so slide the sand away for the moment. Hold the belt with your right hand and cross the left leg to the right. Right, you're still on your bolster. It's not on, your rear is not all the way on the floor on the other side. It's holding you up. Okay, now feel where you push into your foot. Relax the energy of push. See if you can do a bend of the left knee and then just kind of assess the sensation from the left outer hip band. Kind of think of, we talk about movement chamber of the ribs, and kind of the rib is that chamber. The hip, I feel like if I put a little bit of awareness of the side layer of my hip in the band of circulation into my IT band, that's true. There is an IT band. And then the upper, flexor area in the piriformis, there's just a lot of interesting areas that get kind of netted together. So just feeling some openness and stretch. and then come back into bending your knee. Remember we did that a little while ago, we drew the knee into the chest. Take that for a moment. You might still hold the belt with the right hand so the foot stays flexed. Your foot's on a leash here, okay? All right, now bring the left foot straight up and the right leg, okay? And work on that bit of a crease in the pelvis, pulling firm. Feel the feet flex, feel the pull. Really work on the feet flexing and pulling them on it so you have resistance. Okay. Now, almost feel like you can wag your tail, so kind of feel how the hips can move a little bit, even though you're holding your feet really close together. Bend the knees. Slip the left foot out of the belt, and you know the drill here. So hold the belt together, left hand grips, and then crosses the right leg to the left. Yeah, and perhaps letting your eyes relax and feel the experience in the leg. And you might have to bend your knee quite a bit. You might be comfortable with the leg kind of sweeping and stretching. And the abdomen, you want that to be centered. So it's not turning. This isn't the type of twist like we do when we cross the leg over. We can give some kind of leisure to the waist twisting. So try to keep that waist centered, like the navel center. I mean, this can be leisurely, I suppose, but feel the pull with the left hand, pulling emphasis. So there's grip. Okay, and then as you bend through that right leg, move the leg back up into center, of course, and then get a feel that this time we don't really need the belt on the foot. Let's take it away, the belt off, and bring the hands below the knee or the back of the leg and pull that right leg in towards your chest. Yeah, the left leg might get kind of floppy. It might start to pivot out quite a bit, is where we're going. So if you need to reset that, just kind of reach down into your left heel. Toes are up. Feel the right leg drawing in. We have habits, you know, it's part of the design, right? Things go downward. So try to sense the circulation in the right leg. Okay, now this leg's going to stretch back. So what we'll do is we'll slide the left foot in, bending the knee. And then as you lower that right foot down, take a moment where the knees swerve side to side, and then you go left, and everything rolls left, and slide down the bolster. It should be horizontal still. And take side sage a way that works for you. And this might be a good day to kind of, you could try other versions that we've done like 10 years ago, what we used to do. So I'm going to just show you one of those versions today. So I like, my go-to on this one is 2 blankets, quarter fold, block overhead, side lie, and stretch the right leg back with the ball. Gotta get all my goodies here. Okay, so this would be your version. Many of you are going to aim for this, I think. This will be where you go, stand here. Okay, other version. Okay, you can always try, but keep going into that if that's what you're going to stay with. That's fine. Other version would be I got my quarter fold, my bolster is this way. You can have a blanket under your hip. This is what we used to do on this one. And then I have to have my arm this way. And so this is a little tough on the shoulder, I think. So I used to do this version. Now I've gone the other direction for shoulder health. But if you find I want a little more exuberance in my stretch, this might be the one that you do. Okay, so it gives you some options. If your armpit can go this direction and stay and have weight on it, there's some people that can do that. Okay, and not have any discomfort afterwards. Okay, now if you do this, you can hold the right wrist with your left hand. Again, this is, some people might do this in this group today. Some that watch this might like this version. Okay. And if you decide you're going with that cross in the blanket under the hip, it's kind of nice to have too. If you're in this horizontal mode, now get a feel for, you're not eliminating this armpit area. So I find that even though my arm is in between, it's just a little more casual on the shoulder. I'm still working on that reach with the waistband. Yeah. Yeah, I imagine most people would take this version, but it's nice to try and see what you might be missing. Okay, now settle into the version of choice here with the bolster position. Let the weight of your head release down. And just simply feel where the weight of the body leans into the props. So where is the breath in the inside? Where do you feel that? If you feel kind of squished, right, when you're on your side, it's different than when on back. On back actually should be more challenging to breathe, but we've done so many of those poses by now over time that you're probably starting to acquire a taste for breathing well in them. But on the side, it's a different breath kind of evaluation in the whole intercostal laying on the side of the waist. Okay, now feeling where the weight is onto you with the sand if you're using that. Let's take about another 5 breaths. Remember, the exhalation encourages you to settle down into the floor. Okay, so let that right hand, if you have the block overhead, you've been using that, leave it there. And we're going to do a balance into the core. So this is a side band, right? So you're working in the side corridor, right? So the intercostals, the QL, this is a nice experience. The obliques, maybe you feel some of that. Okay, so as we let the sand slide away, okay, we'll roll left. So let's see, if you have your bolster this way, you can come out the same way, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's nice to adventure a little bit. Okay, now if your bolster is lengthwise, you're going to sit in the front. If it's horizontal, you just kind of push it back to the blanket. But you want a little space in front of your bolster to sit on the firm ground. Okay, let's take it so that we have the ball between the knees. If you don't have a ball, use a block. It's fine. And you're going to lean back so that if you have the bolster lengthwise, it's kind of nice because you can actually kind of cruise back and almost lie on it, but horizontal works great too. So lean back so that you can squeeze into the ball and you feel some lower abdominal kind of pressure building. Okay, now when you move forward, kind of work with that vision that you're moving your heart towards the knees, not to the ceiling. So I'm squeezing the ball and I move forward with my chest. Inhale, relax the grip on the ball. Exhale, squeeze the ball. You're sitting in what you consider upright as you can be. Now lean back, breathe, and then squeeze the ball and move forward to sitting. And we'll just take several of these. So you lean back. Your arms could be down a little lower. They could be a little higher. But you're squeezing the ball as you come up to sitting. So that could be your only focus. You lean back, relax the grip on the ball. Squeeze to come up to sitting. And take a few tracks of this. It should feel very narrow and kind of confined with your focus. Like it's very challenging. It's a very deep challenge. And it might start to affect the front of the hip bones for a moment. So come back on up, okay, and remove the ball and take the elbows back. Now, if your bolster is lengthwise, you might want to turn it to horizontal. Place your elbows on the bolster. Step your feet out very far apart, right? So there is no wider than a mat, but definitely not close as a hip distance, okay? I don't know, unless your mat is hip distance. Okay, let the knees lean side to side and feel when you go side to side with the knees. You don't have to go all the way to the floor with the knee, because that might not work for some knees. But this front of the hip, right? Not just quads, but the hip flexor area where it bends, pretty simple, bending in the center. You're trying to swing that to the side to stretch it out. I find that I let my head like tilt a little bit back, but my eyes closed. Just kind of feel, you might slide on the bolster, but you might have to reset. Okay, lean side to side, massage the glutes. Okay. Now, next time you come back over to center, you're going to roll to the right hip and take side sage on the opposite. So you will probably need to reset your bolster a little bit, but use the ball inside the left leg. Take a sandbag. So now if you're going to go this version, right, here's where you're at. The other version is, and those of you going into that, just go right into it, would be the blanket. You may already have it kind of set up because you used the blanket last time for some of you on the hip. Yeah, and there's some of us that probably find the shoulder on one side works better than the other side. So this for me, it's okay. Like I said, I like the other version better, but I've just done it for so long now, I've kind of gone away from this one. But this is a nice refresher if I can do it and it feels completely comfortable, maybe just tight in the shoulders. Then I try to take it. So feeling. And the reason you got the blanket on this one is it's a little more pressure in the hip, a little more weight bearing versus the arm when it's under in between, because it just takes a little bit more pressure into the ribs. It's different. Yeah, and you choose your path on that one, horizontal or the bolster's going to be straight back. Just be cautious here on the shoulder. You know, feel how your experience is and getting the ideal sensation in the waist. Right? It's not just a small piece of you, right? It's a pretty important area because it contains breathing muscles, organs. I mean, every kind of piece, every layer inside you is really valuable. So we're just compartmentalizing from pose to pose, aren't we? Okay, so taking the side sage, however it works for you, either bolster lengthwise or horizontal. Rest the brain. With the weight of your head, relax. That's your key focus, is weight of the head down. You know, some questions come up for you about a new angle in a pose. You know, we can go over that after. Or if you're really concerned now, you can always ask, right? You can unmute. You know, feel where there's weight into the hip. Breathing. You know, the upper arm is going to shift. So if your upper arm is in a reach, I want you to start to lower that down to size. Now, let's say if you have your block overhead, go ahead and move that over to the side as well. Okay. And feel the sand shifted away, actually shift it over to the left. and roll the ribs, right? We generally do our movement kind of power in the hips, but your ribs, see if you can circulate them into the bolster and then coming on up. Okay. All right, onto the seated field. Okay, so we're going to take a seat on the bolster. So if your bolster's lengthwise, you want to turn it to horizontal. And as you sit on it across, have a block, have them both nearby, bring them onto your mat. And what we'll take first is center the seat, your seat. Let the right leg stretch out so it goes to about 2 o'clock on the right side. The left knee is going to bend so that your inner thigh you're kind of almost trying to get that to stretch open. But I want you to be a little casual about bending the knee and moving the left foot to the right leg. Feel if you can let that left leg have that bend, the thigh is turned out, and place a ball under the left knee or a block. Okay, so that you can establish, the ball is maybe not as high as, well, for some of them, they're probably the height of the bolster. They're about that. So then your knee has a little bit of support. If you're using a block, you'd probably use it flat, like the lowest setting. Okay, so let's take a sandbag on the left thigh. So up on high, okay? Sand goes all the way up to the hip, kind of a hip hugging sandbag. And then let's take a belt. I don't know that you're all stuck on your bolster. Hopefully your belt isn't too far. Okay. So my foot is now ended up to 2 o'clock, right? It started kind of at 1. And once I got the center piece kind of focused, I can let the leg move a little farther out, which is what I want to get towards. Just naturally. I don't want to force it. Okay, now do a little self-check on how the knees are, especially the left knee. If that's okay, if you need to scoot your foot farther forward, let it work out for the knee. Okay, and then taking a belt, find your center line, then turn the waist to the right. It's kind of robotic, though, it feels like. It's like rotation, but feel that your lower body is in stability and your mid body is mobile. Right? That's important to distinguish for the spine. So when I reach the belt under the right foot, yeah, we kind of have a theme going on today, don't we? Because we did this belt underfoot earlier. We don't usually have a class that has 2 times with that. Must be meant to be. So push into that 2 o'clock, hold on to the belt with the right hand, and then feel that you're turning left and you're going to bend your right elbow. I hope so. It might touch the thigh, that's great. It might be on the side of the right thigh or the inside, kind of almost to the inside. So I like to have the elbow closer to the inside. It's not perfectly on the inside of my right leg, but it's going to that direction. And then I kind of assess how this feels in my spine. So if you're lucky enough to feel, which you could call yourself lucky to feel, notice if you're higher up, if that feels better on your spine, or if you tilt down farther to the right leg. Only do what feels okay for you. Okay, now left arm is stretching. It could go over the side of your face, or it could go behind your back. Now over the side might be good. Might feel like, oh, a little bit of work. Turn your head down to the right leg. And this is a pretty effortful position, pulling with the right hand, stretching with the left arm. Could be behind you, doesn't have to be over. Feel when you're pulling, that feeling of circulation in the waist. Okay, now, if you happen to have your arm over the side, I want you to bring it behind you now. So we all meet with the left arm behind. And keep that pull with the right arm. So the bicep is, you have a bicep curl. And when you slide the right hand on that belt, you're going to come upright. This is important to go slow. I know it's almost painfully slow. And then you're going to turn to your left with the torso, let go of the belt, and reach the right hand to that left leg. However it reaches. If you can't quite get the knee perfectly, accept how far you reach naturally. Don't like lean down and grab the knee and pull it. You know, this is just what happens to be my range of motion right now. So I don't want to tighten my back by reaching down. I want to lift up with the chest. My left arm can reach the hand back to the blankets. Yeah. And the poise here, this is important, right? If you are just observe your posture during the day, it's easy for it to kind of round a little bit, but it's quite helpful to work on that lift of the chest. It could be subtle, but it surely is helpful for the spine. Spine extension. Great, now come back to center and take a block under your right foot, not over there on the 2 o'clock, but in the front under your foot. You gotta bring your foot to it. Foot to noon, there we go, foot to noon. I don't know what time it is at this point. Okay, so we have, I do follow it in this class. So when you lean forward, you're gonna tilt forward and you decide the sandbag for me does not feel right on my left thigh. I can tell, it's almost pulling my spine. So if I put it over to the right thigh, you kind of weight both sides of the spine. Even though it's just a leg, it is weighting into the spine. So hands on the bolster or hands reaching back together, interlacing, or the belt. If you're short, this works out fine. I can hold my bolster, another perk, right? I can hold my bolster. I'm not bending my elbows. Like a little longer limb might be hands on the blanket or hold the belt and lean forward. Okay, now try to keep the spine extending. Now, if you're having difficulty keeping extension versus this rounding, I don't want to show it too long because it doesn't feel good, then you'll need a belt. So if you are guilty of rounding your back, have a belt behind you and just hold it, and that'll almost instantly kind of keep that spine extension. It just makes you work harder. So I take the hand on the bolster route because it's a little easier to do, but yeah, some of you might work on that discipline. Go with it. Try the belt, maybe not. Lean forward, relax the lower abdomen. I don't want to tighten the lower back any deeper, so focus on softening. Okay. All right, now come back up center and take the sand under the knees. So you're going to move the block and then you're going to reach both feet forward and place the sand under. Actually, I don't think under the knees is going to work for everybody's length. I got to keep remembering. We're not all the same lengths. Okay, so under the calves might work just fine. So I have my sand under my calves so I don't hyperextend. That's basically the only reason I'm doing that, because I can't hyperextend much with sandbag under my calves. And when you lean forward, I want you to feel without many props, just sitting on some height, flex your feet. Yep, it might be a challenge to lean forward, but try to keep the toes back. Some of you might find, oh, I can touch my toes. I want to do that, but I want you to keep shoulders centered back because this is touching my toes, rounding. Reach forward, flex the feet. Okay. Relax the feet, hands on below the knees and tap in. So you're going to go up. You have to be careful tapping below your knee because it might spring back up with your reflexes. Okay. Tapping all the way to the top and then reach the hands to the back of the legs, just above the back of the knees. Hold the hands there. Lean forward, relax your feet, and then flex your feet while you're leaning forwards. Breathe. Okay. Now come up with the chin lifting. Bring the right knee in and then right knee out. And ball under the knee, left leg stretches out to the 10 o'clock. Well, we'll get to 10, I bet you. Once you get your sand on the right thigh, and this side will go with a little bit more speed to it because you have an idea. Okay, so the focus is this width right through the hips, pelvis, leg. And then as I get the belt, I'm going to keep my focus centered on my ribs mobilizing, not my lumbar. So If this feels like it's specifically programmed for stability, it is. So the place right above the bolster on your lower back should feel kind of programmed to stay in this shape. Okay, and then get a belt. You don't have to have it buckled up, it's not required, but scoop up your left foot and then reach with your left hand down onto that belt, bend with your elbow, turn with the waist to the right, push into the belt, push into the belt. So you have this push and pull, push and pull. And just stay with that little focus, push and pull. Turn the torso to the right. It's okay if you don't make any big moves, right? If you decide to have your hand just perched on the sandbag and that's interesting, that's okay. If it's curious for you in your waist, on one side it's different than the other, it's quite possible. Right, the fascia on the other side has a different ease to it. I mean, there's quite a bit internally that can affect that. So feel your way of reaching, whether it's over the side of the face or behind your back. And just pull. Shoulder back, chest is moving, open to the right. Yeah, take that feeling of moving of the shoulder, right shoulder back. Now, if my arm is reaching, it's a little different identity with the shoulder moving back, isn't it? So it would be more ribs back, arm reaching, but be careful that your head is comfortable, your neck is okay. Not your head, it's your neck usually. Turning your head towards the left leg, breathing. Great. Okay, now right arm behind your back. Come up, wherever you are. Okay, left hand to right leg. The second side, you just kind of never know. I mean, it could be that you can easily reach the knee. Yeah, these seated field poses are generally considered advanced, and to get them even on each side it's a lifetime. So feel when you rotate, your right hand could be on your back, it could be down to the blanket. That feels really good. And once you kind of know where your emphasis is, you can really go into it on your own, at your own pace. So letting the shoulder move back on the right side. It's hard to do that with my hand on my back. It's possible, but it's difficult. So take a few more moments here. If your neck is getting more rigid, let your head maybe turn a little side to side or tilt your ear to your shoulder. Give yourself some relief in the neck, but be gentle. Okay, now relax the pressure of that twist. So you're going to come back into center forward and then take the left knee to bending and the block in front. And I know these movements, I'm acting a little bit kind of rigid about them, but I want you to just kind of get an awareness of nice kind of alignment skills and tune-up. You know, it's a very brief amount of time you're taking into it. So, you know, feel when the foot is on the block. Okay, and this side, lift the chest, lift the heart. Try to keep that lift. You could close your eyes if it's feeling awkward. Relax the face. And then lean forwards. I suppose the word lean brings into it sometimes a rounding motion, but try to let your body weight tilt forwards. The hands could be back on the bolster, they could be holding a belt, but feeling that motion, which we're going to really stretch through the legs in a moment. We're going to get all of it in here. Okay, come back. And then as you shift the ball, if you had it under your knee, push that aside. And then let's place the sand across other side onto the floor. And then this time just roll the shoulders, taking the belt away, okay? Roll the shoulders. And then we're gonna kind of roll a bit through the hips. So Take away that left foot off the block. Place your blocks kind of back behind you where you're at. And then when you come around to hands and knees, you're going to get near a wall and use a blanket under your knees. Yeah, getting these props kind of reset it's a doozy sometimes. So just be casual, just like, okay, I got all these props. Gonna have a good time getting them moved around. So you got your sand on the side, the blocks are on the other side. The blanket won't be used to the very end, so you can put that away. But I want you to have the bolster. Let's see, let's push it forward for now and have our hands on the mat. Knees are wide, feet touch the wall. So give yourselves a few moments so everyone finds their wall spot. And round your back and feel that curl. And then feel the natural, they're kind of both curls, aren't they, through the spine. We could call this spine curling. Okay, so round the back, chin to chest. Inhale, arch. Round the back. So get a feel that you pick up the movement with the pelvis first. And then the pelvis swings back and the chest reaches forward. There's a lot of power in the pelvis. I mean, there's quite a bit of pelvis power. Okay, also can feel kind of rigid around the hips with it. So lean forward. If this is really hurting your wrists, right, you can use the hands, can be in more of a fist. It's a little more muscular, but you can also turn the fingers out, turn the hands out. I guess not your fingers, but your hands. Stretch the torso. Oh, this feels good after having been sitting for a little while. Come all the way back to what's comfortable for your knees. So stretch the hips towards the wall. And then round the back into that spine curl. And then reach the hips up. The chest lifts. And then come back. So take the spine curl pattern for a few more moments. Not a few more times, a few more moments. Okay, is that 3 breaths? All right. Okay, now next time you come back almost to table, get a block for each hand inside the mat. It should be on the sticky mat itself. Hands on, so the blocks are at the second setting or the third. This is just a little tippy for me, so I like the center, second setting. Now, swing the right foot. In fact, you might even kind of play with how do you move your spine and your hip. Some of us get this manual expression, like manual lunge movement, but you're kind of moving out of the pelvis to get there. So stretch the foot forward, however it goes. Could look kind of funny today, but that's okay. No one knows. All right, stretch that right knee forward so you're stretching the left thigh. Okay, lean back to reverse lunge, toes up on the right foot, let your head move down to that right leg. Great, inhale, forward lunge, knees on the blanket, lift the chest. Exhale, reverse lunge, toes up. Inhale forward. Exhale back. If the breath pace is too slow, you can find a different pace. Last time forward. Now, push off of the back foot. So I'm going to scoot my blocks back so I can use the wall. Okay, lift the back knee. And then feel the separation of the reality of the leg. So my right knee is above the ankle. I don't want to dart it forward so that my left heel is pressing to the wall. So some of you might have your foot all the way touching the wall, the whole thing, as much of it as you can, except the toes on the floor. Some of you will kind of push a little bit away from it, okay? Either's fine. But guess what? We're going to step forward with the left foot besides the right and take a forward fold. You can reach to your bolster. You can put your hips positioning back and your spine stretching forward and down. Sometimes the bolster is really nice. Some of you might find you need your blocks on top to do this version. This works good too. Okay, and you can always hold your elbows and get a little different sense of traction for your back. Letting your head relax down. You know, some of you might not like that head relaxed down. Some might prefer here. So this is okay. Some of us, this just messes with blood pressure too much and is disturbing. So some of us holding the elbows is great. Not everyone though. And cross the arms the other direction. If you're in elbow lock, if you're not, and your hands are on the bolster or the blocks, that's different. Now feel how separate the knees are. So noticing if they're pushing towards each other, keep them apart. Let your head release itself to a position so you can get both hands on your blocks and bring your feet closer together, almost big toes touching. All right, and then taking that right leg to reach back. So get a feeling of the right leg back to the wall. And first things first, just let the heel be up at the wall for now so we can go kind of backwards on this side. Feel the reach of the left knee. Okay, and then gently, I want you to feel when you lower the back knee to the blanket, hopefully it made it on a blanket, your foot can still push into the wall. This is the nice thing about a wall. You know, you use it as a kind of springboard, and it's helpful for the weight pattern into the bones. It's a resistance. It's purely resistance moving into the bone structure. I love the wall. Okay, now lean back. If this is hurting your knee at all, what you might need to do is get farther away from the wall and have less of your whole foot pushing into it. Some of us, it doesn't work well with the knee. So if you need to move a little bit away and just have a light touch with the foot at the wall, that's okay. But the blanket, I think, is essential. So alternate between this lunge with the knee reaching forward as much as it will go, huh? And then when you lean back, feel the undercurrent of the left leg stretching, toes up. Reach forward. Give it a few times. We're going to link this one into bridge pose soon. So if you want to have your head kind of leaning down, or you might want to have a lift with the heart. Leaning back, stretching the hamstring. It's had a good amount of stretch today. And back forward. Okay, last one. When you are leaning back, I want you to step the left foot back and then place the blocks over to the side carefully, and then reach for your bolster. Okay, and we'll slide it to the wall and then come away from our blanket under our knees and take that to the other side into that half fold, right? It's kind of a mild half fold there. And then move your bolster right next to the wall, flat. Okay. All right, so place your feet at the bottom of the feet on the bolster, and as you lower back, you might let's do a little bit of fascial massage here. I get lost on this one and ends up going minutes over, I know, but let's just get into it now. So we got it. We're doing this. So if you have a massage ball, these are nice to do. The block does not work for this one. So if you don't have a massage ball, you can let the knees go windshield wiper side to side with the feet on the bolster. If that works, okay. It's not quite the same, but it's still glute massage. So you want to have the ball under the buttock, so one at a time, one glute at a time, or glute area, and massage into the body weight on the ball and then movement. So do both weight and movement. If the blanket doesn't feel high enough, you can always fold it up a little higher. Okay. So you know what's interesting with the ball is sometimes if I put it right at the glute medius, so center, upper buttock area, and then I pin then I push down and sit on it. So I got my body weight on the ball. And then I just kind of squiggle and move my hips side to side like you're wagging your tail. But sometimes I'll lean over the knees over to one side and just kind of feel like I nab the ball. I have it on a spot that's a little tight. And then you might actually find that spot in just maybe the side of the hip. Maybe it's lateral leg area. And just massage where you need it. Right? Not in everybody's same spot there. But you got to figure out one side might be a little bit more sensitive than the other. So movement will be much more comfortable versus pressure. So it's either going to be pressure, little movement, or pressure, movement. Like that, pressure, movement. Okay, now kind of feel when you move off of that, the hips are down. Okay, so now we're going to take a position of the feet. Let's just trust that we all can have our knees about hips distance and they're not going to go way out. If you have trouble keeping your knees in line, put a ball between the knees so that you track the position. But feel like your feet push into the bolster. Your feet might not be right on the top. They might be a little bit contoured, but the bolsters are kind of perfect for this. So I push, I get resistance, I lift my hips. I can feel the area I was just working a little bit with the ball and lower the spine. Okay. Now, when your arms are reaching back overhead, make sure the blanket kind of stops you from sliding out. So this is why some people like their blanket higher, I think. Okay, because the higher is going to be less sliding out, I think. Alternate the lift up and down the spine. Okay, now feeling when you're moving into the weight of your upper back, that lift of the hips. Okay, now feel where your height is with your hips. Like just notice, you don't have to touch your hips, but feel energetically how much what muscles are working here. Okay, and then take a block. I would use just one today. So you want to have your block at the second setting, just slide it under, and if you go, oh, I can't go, that's not my height, right? You'll have to use a little bit more lift of your hips to get the block under. But then once you land your back of your pelvis on that block, right around the tailbone area, usually you can hold that height with the block, not by yourself usually. By yourself, not happening. I like to stretch my feet to the wall if it works out. I'm very happy that I have that alignment. But not all of us are going to find the walls perfect for this one. Some will find the knees bending is just fine. Some will feel as if we did in the first pose today was this variation. We just had our bolster under the spine. It wasn't any different. So it's another experience of bridge pose with specifics in the hips. So instead of trying to grip your buttocks, feel if you can let them relax. Let the hip flexors gently open, and the arms are wherever you're comfortable, by your sides, out to the sides, just not straight back. And take a moment where you feel where the shoulders are moving back and your neck is lengthening. Feel if you're fortunate to feel your feet push. It might be at the wall, it might be on the bolster. It might be a little both. Okay, so you're going to kind of push into the balls of the feet like you're trying to point your toes, but you can't because you got a wall in the way. Okay, so that reinforces that length. And now when you bend through the legs, okay, we'll push. And let's first let the spine stretch. So you feel a little bit of a scooping of the tailbone. And then reach for the block, slide it out. You've got to engage your glutes a little to get that block out. But once you do, you're going to lower the spine, every little vertebrae. And we'll take the bolster. I want you get to choose here on the crossover. I think, some of us might like crossovers where you've got your quarter-fold blanket, left leg over, cross the knees to the right. There's a few that still like those. It's okay. I don't prefer it for my knee. So I push the bolster to the right side of my mat. But some do really like that crossover, that kind of kickstart into just the gravitational kind of pull of the muscle when they cross the legs and knees to the right. If you don't feel anything with the knee and it doesn't bother you, then you certainly can do that. Okay, but for some of us, we're going to have the bolster on the right side of the mat. We're going to cross the left leg on top of it and then add the ball. The ball can be added for either version easily. Okay, sand is towards the knee. So let's add some sand. We're going to sweep through the hips and then take a final inversion. So stay here for a few more moments if you can, so you get the full experience. And feel if that left arm is out, if the shoulder centers down, the chest is gently opening. Yeah, see if you can do less of strain, but still aim to open up in the chest. Yeah, sometimes I like to do this, not with the right arm, just anywhere, but occasionally with the arm across the chest, and then hold the elbow with my left hand and kind of pull to stretch the deltoid. Sometimes this feels nice. It stretches my torso a bit. It's not a forever yank of my elbow, though. Eventually I let it go. Let the arm relax down, maybe elbow on the floor, hand resting to the sand. And feel the movement, circulation in the belly and the ribs. You know, scan the feeling from your awareness in the hips, but what's above the back of the pelvis, where that sensation is. Let your breath be in that area of your back. And then slide the ball away in the sand and change side. So if your bolster's on the side, you might squeeze your knees into your chest for either of versions, whether your feet are on the bolster or the bolster's across to the side. Take it to the other side. Again, if your feet are on the bolster, you'll just switch and let the right leg cross over, knees to the left. And your feet would be on the bolster. That's key. Now, I wouldn't take the crisscross with the bolster on the side yard. You'll probably find that you'll get this twist in the waist. It's different than when we were on our bolster in the early part of class. Remember that long ago? And we were trying to keep this centered and not real twisty, but now we're taking the waist to give it permission to twist a bit more. So taking the sand and the circulation closer to the knee, and then you decide if you want to hold on to your left elbow and stretch the arm across. Make sure the arm is low on it's not yanking up over your chin or anything. It's low across the chest. Holding the elbow, perhaps, not required. And just feeling that sensation. And it might be different on this side. But we're trying to offer the same focus with the hold on the elbow to feel some evenness into the shoulders. Okay, now let go of that grip if you're using that deltoid stretch moment, and feel where that right shoulder and left shoulder are down. And don't forget, it's a hip stretch. It's a hip and waist crossover. And you're feeling how the weight of the legs are. Move the ball aside. Both legs. It's easy to feel the left leg weight, but the right leg as well. And then roll to that left side. Slide the sand over. Turn. So you'll come up and you'll move your bolster right up against the wall flat, I'm assuming, and slide the blanket in. And then take a Viparita Karani, so legs up the wall. So take your seat right to the wall and have your other blanket nearby if you're going to use it. And as you swing the legs upside down, let it be pretty pure and simple that they're just upside down. They don't have to be perfectly touching into the wall, meaning the back of the knees. I don't think that's necessarily that useful. I'm just trying to find what my natural lift is of my legs. And then as I add my sand to my feet, scoop it up. Okay, pushing up with the feet. Land here. If you want to have that extra warmth, you can add it to your torso. And take a few moments where you center the dynamic, reversing the flow of gravity in the body, back to the heart and the brain. And, feeling a little support under your head is important here, not under your shoulders, but under your head. And let the hands either relax under the blanket if you have that. If you have an eye pillow, put that across the eyes. And feeling the circulation from the pose. Actually, feeling the poses, I think, is helpful. We're going to go through the exercises and have a reasonable amount of attention to doing our practice, but it's okay to enjoy it and feel the circulation from the whole practice inside the body. Feeling the body versus all the things in the mind that you scratch your head to get ready to do. A few more moments. Do a self-check that the neck is lengthening. Breathing into that lower abdomen. And on the exhalation, feeling the breath. Return back to preparation for the next in-breath. And letting go. Take a deep, deep breath, 4 to 5 counts in through the nose. Exhaling, let it go. Alternating that in and out breath. Notice the fullness in the legs from the weight into them. Just putting weight, infusing it into the feeling of legs. So once you shift the feet off the wall and remove the sand, you could toss it overhead. You could crease at the knees and the hips and slide it. And then just feel the legs lifted without that weight. And that distribution of circulation up to the hips. Or actually down to the hips because you're upside down. And now we're going to turn it around. Unless you want to stay upside down, you can stay upside down. That's fine with me. Okay, feel when the knees bend, feel where the hips hinge, and roll to any side. Try to get into a cannonball here, and then come up. Okay, so you have to kind of get a little folded in there to get a nice curl around. But once you take a seat on your bolster, feel the legs crossing, feel the spine ascending, and just improving that circulation into the face and the brain from the last pose. Lift your shoulders up high, and then roll them back and down. Inhale, hands up to meet in front of the heart, above the heart. And exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste.